I don't really have a real answer of why this project exists. Ultimately, sure, he's dead, but not to me.
I think you were as close as any two brothers probably that ever lived, just about.
Every time I remember seeing Jordan, I remember seeing Justin.
I would say if you knew one of them, you probably knew both of them.
You know, it was a special thing to see how much you guys loved each other.
You can't help but think about Justin and him due to how close they were and, hey, what's this gonna do to Justin?
I remember many times seeing tears in his eyes as he would play.
It's something that doesn't go away. That's just a reflection of the significance and the impact.
So I just wish you could have met him, but you can't, so I made this documentary. It's not good enough, but it's all I got.
People say you can tell a lot about someone by the way they play the game of basketball. Jordan, he played it like he lived his life. He always gave 100%, and he made everybody around him better. Jordan was the best teammate I ever had.
Welcome to Impactology Live. The powerful trailer we've just shared with you introduces us to the thought-provoking documentary My Brother Jordan, proudly made by Justin Robinson, who is a US film director, writer, and narrative filmmaker. Importantly, Rita and I, in preparing for this, Justin is a thoughtful and inspiring young man. And Justin's documentary, My Brother Jordan, has captured the hearts of millions around the world. For me personally, it was my 17-year-old daughter that came to me and said, "Hey Dad, I think you need to check this out." And check out I did. And the documentary has captured the hearts of millions around the world. More specifically, it's captured the hearts of 10 million hearts around the world. The documentary just in the last few days has surpassed 10 million YouTube views since its release on August 19. And it was released on the 12-year anniversary of the death of Justin's brother Jordan. The story has positively impacted me. Personally, it's an inspiring message of hope and to take care of what matters most in life. Now, we're honoured to have Justin join us today. And before we chat with Justin, anyone that is viewing this, feel free to put your questions in the comments section. And at the end of this presentation, chat with Justin. We'll reflect on some of those questions and ask them of Justin. So we're honoured again to have Justin here today. Justin, welcome to Impactology Live.
Thanks for having me.
And for all of us, for everyone that's joining us here today who haven't seen the documentary, who is Justin Robinson and what's your story?
That's a good question. That's one of the mysteries of the world. So I'm the youngest of four brothers. My dad was a Southern Baptist pastor in the southeast of America. Grew up homeschooled, pretty sheltered, Christian religious upbringing. And, for whatever reason, my brothers were 3 years apart. And the third born, Jordan, I happened to be just magically close with. We did everything together. He was quiet, I wasn't. He was kind, I wasn't. Anything he was, I was kind of the opposite. He was the best version of that thing, and I was kind of the worst version of that thing. And so looking back, if Jordan wasn't my brother, I know that it's a cliche to say, well, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would probably be, if I'm like an edgy version of myself, I would be a very, very sharp person in probably the worst way. So for whatever reason, Jordan's personality and my personality just meshed. Often we clashed like some brothers, but we meshed in a scientific way, that like a science experiment where they did all these tests and all these brothers came out and they went this way and this way. And me and Jordan, they were like, oh, wow, fire and water. Perfect. That's what we need. You balance him and he balances you. So whenever Jordan was too soft spoken, I nudged him to speak up. And when I was about to bite somebody's head off, Jordan maybe was the peacemaker. And so we just developed a relationship over our lifetime of growing up as pastor kids, going to church every week, and we moved around a lot. So our set of friends weren't always the same. And you know, when you move at any age, it can make or break a lot of people. And I think because I had Jordan, I was never broken. It wasn't like moving is the worst thing in the world, but I always had Jordan in my corner and he always had me. And in the same way that I respected him, I know that he respected me, even though I was a lot shorter, 3 years younger. Often, if I was a dog, I'd have to be an outside dog and probably have a shot collar and a fence, and then a fence after that. And Jordan was kind of the other dog that's like the real chill old one, even though he's not old. So all that to say, grew up pretty sheltered. We weren't allowed to watch many movies. You'll see in the documentary, or if you've already seen it, we had to watch G-rated films, which in the 90s that comprised of mostly not a lot of movies. So in particular, you know how a lot of movie studios combat and make two of the same movies and see who can make it first. And you watch them and go, oh, it's really similar. Well, in the 90s, for what we owned was two pig movies, Gordy and Babe. Don't know why that we owned both of those, but we watched those on reruns. Then we had the BBC Chronicles of Narnia, The Silver Chair on VHS. That was watched all the time. We watched all of our sports games, Michael Jordan on VHS, because we didn't have cable. So I grew up in this world that I wasn't exposed to filmmaking. I wasn't exposed to like arts in a lot of ways. I never knew at an early age that there was a director. I didn't know Alfred Hitchcock was the puppeteer. I didn't know Spielberg was making the dinosaurs go this way. I just was kind of in awe because anytime I saw a movie that was good, it was usually when I wasn't supposed to, and I kind of had an attraction to it, but not I was 5 and I picked up a camera and knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. So years go by, my dream was to play college basketball. Jordan kind of teetered on basketball, was into it, but he was kind of a passively interested kid. He would be interested in this and play baseball and just a normal kid. I was really, really motivated to play college basketball. And so we had this Pistol Pete movie, who was a U.S. college athlete who holds the college record for the most points ever. I watched his movie before every game I ever played. So I took basketball very seriously. Even when we filmed with our VHS camera a game, I would go back and study it. So I just had this mind that was a sponge. And so fast forwarding to high school, Jordan got into basketball really heavily with me. We were obviously inseparable, as you see in the documentary. And then Jordan got cancer in 2007, and 13 months later, he died right before my senior year of basketball. And so with his death, my dreams and hopes and kind of motivation to play basketball kind of died with him. And through our middle school era, we kind of dabbled in videos. I wouldn't say film or sketches. I wish I could say we were writing scripts, but it was basically us running around in hurricane weather off the coast of Florida and going, hey, go do a fake news report. But there was a seed planted of video, of filmmaking, of directing, even though I wouldn't call it directing. And so when Jordan died, the love for basketball, the motivation to play, to do that with my life, left, and it was kind of replaced by filmmaking. And so that led me 4 years later, my senior year of college, to document Jordan's life, because I felt that, granted, there's no language for death. Not many people are fluent in hard conversations, let alone conversations that are really hard about someone who died or is dying. And so I wanted to kind of establish this tattoo of my brother's story and my own and my memory in a thing that, granted, everybody could see in the end, but it was for me. So I started making this film in 2012. Long story short, it took me 8 years, a lot of peaks and valleys. There was no production company behind me. There was no rich uncle funding the film. It was just me and a camera and a really terrible lav mic that I drove all over the country trying to film interviews with people that knew Jordan at his peak. And then I just kind of dieted from everything else and said no to everything else. You know, a lot of people, especially when I work on movies as a camera assistant at the time, you work really long days and then people go eat out or they go to the bar, or they go drink or whatever. And I was always the person that would never go because, for one, I want to be a writer. And so, hey, I just spent 12 hours with you. I got nothing but love for you. But these next 3 hours are for me. And so I kind of had to diet in situations like that. That's not the hardest thing to diet from, honestly, but I kind of had to take my life into my own hands because the journey was going to be so long. You know, it's like Sam and Frodo, Lord of the Rings, you know, they pack for what they think they might need, but I needed a bigger backpack for the journey I had. So 8 years later, a lot of hours later, I finished a film this year in January, almost 8 years on the dot. Didn't know what to do with it, just wanted to screen it with friends and show people live. Then, of course, COVID hit. That changed everything. Tried to seek out some possible streaming opportunities with colleagues because I don't have an agent or manager or someone to sell the documentary, which wasn't my intention. I just wanted people to see it. And so then I thought, hey, it's a very me thing to do to put it on my own Vimeo channel and my YouTube channel for free on Jordan's, you know, quote, anniversary, which is not the greatest word, but 12 years to the day of his death. And then 2 weeks into it, the YouTube algorithm kind of blew it up. And here we are, 10 million views later and almost 3 months to the day.
And Justin, you introduced a real honest narrative around death and grief in the documentary. Why do you think the documentary has captured the hearts of people around the world?
I think no matter what you believe or where you're from or what your skin color is, everybody knows life and death. That's inevitable. You live and you die. And I think that's universal. Also, I think with the coronavirus and most people being quarantined or less busy at home, that made the film a lot more watchable. An hour might have seemed impossible for people to sit down and watch pre-COVID, but because people weren't as busy, I think it allowed people to sit down and go, yeah, I have an hour. I mean, I'm already watching a bunch of stuff I don't want to watch. Maybe I want to watch this. So, and I think Jordan is universal. I've been overseas with Jordan. I've been with him in every walk of life, sports, life, all of our upbringing, every state we ever lived. And Jordan could be like a blanket to every conversation. He's warm, he's comforting, he's loving. And as soon as you take that blanket away, you know, you almost miss it. And I think Jordan just had that way about him. No matter if you spoke Spanish or spoke English or from Australia or from South Carolina, Jordan just had that way about him. He was every guy's guy is what a lot of people said when I interviewed him. And that couldn't be more true. So I think people feel that when they see him, when they hear him, when they see a picture of him, they know who that guy is.
And what really, really surprised me as well, Justin, was the way I found out about the documentary. As I mentioned in the opening, my 17-year-old daughter, it entered her radar on TikTok. It went viral on TikTok. I suspect you weren't on TikTok at the time. What was it like when you started seeing some of these views? And then, as you said, you know, the algorithm on YouTube went crazy. What were your thoughts around that time, particularly coming from a medium that we probably would least expect that a documentary with a theme like the documentary would actually go viral there?
Yeah, I pride myself on being a very aware person and almost in some aspects, maybe conversationally or relationally, knowing what's coming. But I did not know TikTok was going to be involved in my life. I didn't know much about the app. I thought it was just where, you know, people did the cool fad dance that was, you know, in the weekly dance routine thing. So, I mean, rewinding, I'm a one-man band. I had just made it. A few friends came on and helped out and made this thing. I'm not a marketing person. I don't have a marketing degree. I made some marketing material that I would be interested in as a filmmaker. I try to write screenplays that I want to see. That's kind of the only philosophy I take on. So the same goes for anything I post. I want it to be valuable. I want it to have value in the world. I want it to of course, make you want to see it. But it was about 2 weeks into it being available online when it had around 20,000 views. And I had thought, that's probably everyone I know that knew about this project, because people that knew Jordan knew this film was being made for 8 years. So, you know, any update I had when it finally was releasing the trailer, everyone's anticipating it, because I think it was awesome to see that. But when it was 2 weeks in, and I thought, that's probably that was when it went to the YouTube algorithm. Somehow, it's a mystery, I don't know, but it got on the river and it just cruised down, hit the waterfall, bam, 50,000 views. I was like, whoa. And then people started texting me screenshots of TikTok, meaning pictures of mainly high school girls all over the world crying on camera. And I think most social media is people say a highlight reel, or especially people who present themselves in their best light, want to be pretty, want to be attractive. And a lot of them were girls wearing no makeup and just sobbing and ugly crying. And I thought that was really amazing, because at first I was kind of like, do they do reaction videos to other movies, other documentaries, or is this a new thing? Who started it? Who was the first person to do this? So I made a TikTok to kind of thank everybody. And then I looked up the My Brother Jordan hashtag, and there's like probably 1,000 or more. I haven't even seen them all, just videos of people reacting and watching the film and then maybe talking about it. And that was, I can't imagine how many views came just from TikTok. So total surprise.
And it is that secret DNA in any good movie or documentary that, you might think why it's working, but it's what's unseen that is probably where the magic is. Now, Justin, you're a narrative filmmaker. Why choose a documentary style to share your story?
It's a good question. So I get asked a lot now that the film has been out, what's your next documentary? And I have no plans for another documentary. I never had any hate or ill will towards documentaries. I watch a lot of documentaries, or the fair amount, but I think Jordan's story was best told through the vehicle of a documentary. But I was working on a book at the time, and I shelved it to finish this. And so I'm revisiting that, because there's a lot that's not told. And people may say, well, why are you telling? I'm a storyteller, and that's a story that I have to tell. So, and it's one I feel very strongly about. So I think a documentary tells it best. And I think a book is also something that would be really valuable, but it's a picture and audio that I had is so valuable to be shared, because a lot of people who have lost loved ones don't even have a picture or an audio clip or video, and they don't know what their laugh sounds like anymore. And so I had all this gold in this nostalgic VHS 4x3 Super 8 Handycam footage that my parents and us had filmed so much of, that I was grateful to have, that it was easier than it would have been in a lot of aspects to share that story, to paint a picture for everybody to go, I can't give you the real thing. This is as good as I can. And this is every piece of evidence. This is every audio clip, every good picture that I have of my brother. And so I think the documentary is the best way, although Jordan makes his way into most of my narrative films, indirectly or directly, even subconsciously, even without an audience knowing, or very, something about cancer. But the documentary, I think, was the best vehicle to drive us there.
And just talking about just the sheer volume of footage that you had to work with there. Why 8 years? What was it about that length of time, and what did it do for you with your grieving process?
Yeah, I didn't have any set deadline. I mean, when I first started, I had a very small seed of an idea. I knew I wanted to tell the world about Jordan. I knew I wanted to solidify my experiences. I knew that I wanted to prove to myself that I remembered it exactly as it happened, and I remembered Jordan exactly as he was, because I know a lot of people, meaningful or not, after someone dies, oh man, what a great guy, what a great lady, and sometimes that's not always the truth, and I had no reason to lie. And so I wanted to tell the truth about who Jordan was. And so for the first few years, it took me a while just to own up to being able to put myself in the documentary, just in a very, the world is a very insecure place, and racism is a very, very real thing. And I think there's small forms of if you shave your head, someone will rip you for having a shaved head. If you get a new hair color, someone's going to get I was a very flamboyant person, and Jordan was not. And I knew that if I included myself, that I would draw attention away from the purity of Jordan, even if I just have dyed my hair pink. It doesn't matter. And so I didn't want to I just wanted you to go, here's my brother, and kind of do this. But after a while, it took me a while to own up, to go, I'm the best person, I'm the only person to tell the story. And not that I worry too much about what people think. I just know that truly does affect what it is. So I think if they can get past something like that, or they can get past, they'll get to know Jordan. But I just had a fear of, causing a little bridge. I didn't want to be the bridge. I wanted to, I don't know. I wanted to disappear.
Yeah.
Years later, about 2015, I had a friend come and help me, and that's when I started to include myself in the documentary and really own up, not out of fear, just out of I didn't want to influence Jordan's story in some way. So then I started, writing all the narration, and then years and years of work, and then I moved, and I was working a full-time job, and I was dating, now my wife, and kind of prolonged that. I was saying no to jobs to do more stuff for the documentary. I was traveling on my own coin, and so it just took year after year, and banging my head over the table, editing all this footage, and it just finally, I locked the edit in 2018 and didn't finish the music and color and sound until January of this year. So everything just took quite a while, but every step of the way, it was a worthy scar to share at the end.
Justin, how did this, making the documentary, how did that impact you, that whole experience over the course of the time, such a lengthy time? How do you think it changed you and impacted you?
Sure, I'll be assessing that for the rest of my life. I think a lot of ways it was also something that was an experiment of not looking down or looking back. When you're on a tight walk between mountains, and granted, I haven't done that literally, this is metaphorically only, but I think a lot of people look down and they want to see how far they come. I just kind of kept my head down and moved forward. And so it's an exercise in staying motivated and seeing the finish line and crawling over it or running past it. So, it wasn't easy, but I think a lot of people were like, oh, that must be tough. And for me, I made the whole documentary because I wanted to talk about him. It wasn't because I wanted to hide him away or hide me away. The worst pain would be not letting the world see him. The worst pain would be living with it, feeling like I'm the only person that knew Jordan, who he really was, and I'm the only person who's willing to talk about him, because death silences a lot of people, whether it's they mean to, or whether it's a good thing or bad thing. People are afraid to speak good or bad about someone. They're afraid to bring it up. And especially for me, I'm known as two things: a filmmaker or Jordan's dead brother. And so people don't know how to talk to either, because there's like a little bit of fake celebrity with a filmmaker, and then there's the unknown with, oh my gosh, you're the brother of the dead guy. So then there's no conversation starter. So I wanted to talk about him. And so for me, it was way easier to make it than to not make it, although it took me 8 years, if that makes sense. So I don't have a great answer for you, but I know it matured me very quickly, his death and making this film. But yeah, I don't have a great answer at this point.
When I watched the documentary for the first time, it's that grief that really comes through, and the passion, the relationship that you both had. But I think the other theme that comes through is love. Did the process of making the film, did it teach you anything maybe that you didn't know about love?
I don't know many things in life, but I know the currency of love, and I know how to deposit it, and I know how to save it. And I think Jordan was someone who taught me that, and someone who encouraged me out. I'm a kid that a lot of people would want to muzzle and probably put in a special educational class and put, stigmas on me. And Jordan was someone who I think knew that about me, but was willing to let me kind of like roam free and be the Bronco I am, but also be a horse at times when, this is a lot of metaphors. I'm sorry, that's like my language. But so I don't think I learned anything new. It was more solidifying and remembering things exactly the way they were, and knowing that Jordan was as good as I remember. And Jordan was, in some ways, just the example that I needed to keep coming to, because life is very lonely, whether you live with people or whether you're around people. And obviously without my, soulmate, the person I was with almost 18 years of my life, when that person's not gone, everything is done alone. You drive alone, you go to school alone, you're in the same class, all that stuff. So I think it was more just solidifying what I did know, rather than learning something new about love and about being an empathetic but also confident person. And Jordan was the one who I think gave me the biggest canvas to paint on in that way.
Justin, we have viewers from all around the world that are watching this particular interview. We've got representation from Texas, South Carolina, even Italy. It's quite, obviously there's been such an embracing from, a global perspective of your story. And we will go to some of those questions. People are interested about whether there'll be a book, but we'll get you to tell us that later because I'm not sure whether you've got something in the pipeline there. What I am interested in is the world has embraced this story. How has your family felt about this story? Your parents, siblings, extended family, how have they felt about the way that you've told this story?
I think from their initial thoughts, I think it's been a very good thing. I think initially, probably because of a viewpoint or perspective on me and maybe how I took things early on, I think there was a perspective of, oh, it's just going to be this really hopeless, depressing, cancer sucks thing. And, the thing about me and Jordan was we could be very serious, me especially, but we could be as bonkers as anybody, completely sober, mind you. So imagine if we weren't, but it was an ability that I knew would take me into my filmmaking. I kind of want to make films that are genreless. I know that we have to put words to things and say this movie is this, but I want you to do all the things. I want you to experience every human emotion. That's why I think even people who take a personality test and say, I'm a 9, I'm a 2, I don't want, and I think that can have a good thing in their mind, but I don't want someone to ever only feel that they're a 9, or I can only feel like, or I can only think like this set of things has told me I can think like. So I think as a filmmaker, I wanted to make something that wasn't just very sad. So I think in that regard, with spending time making fun of our childhood and our homeschool haircuts and like laughing about some of those things, I think opened people to be able to experience the heavy, the sad, and the depressing cancer sucks stuff. So I think, I mean, my mom was like reading the comments on the YouTube, the link on YouTube, which I don't think she had ever done anything like that on something I made. So I think it's their own experience, and I think it's something that they can share, they can talk about, they can remember, they can have, a solidified memory in those aspects as well. But the worldwide thing has really blown me away because I think that's one of the coolest things, because any country I've ever been, I try really hard to learn the language because I love to do that. And it also makes people feel welcome. It also feels like they're important. They feel important because they see you putting in the work. And so when I've gotten messages and people have reached out, hey, I'm from Australia, hey, I'm from New Zealand, hey, I'm from Singapore, yeah, I just thought that was amazing, because whether they needed captions on YouTube or they spoke English or broken English, the ability to all see the same thing, which is just a great person, that's the universal bit of who Jordan was. It doesn't matter that's what was so brilliant. So the world getting to see this and the world enjoying it together, I think is so beautiful, because our world is so broken and so confused and such a mystery at times, and not as empathetic as it needs to be for each other. Not just everyone's like their own individual. We're America, you're Australia. And I think being able to come and realize that we're all the same thing, we just live in different places, and sometimes we look a little bit different. I've been really encouraged by that, and remembering that people are people and humans need each other. So that's the short answer, I guess.
Now, Justin, those countries that you mentioned, English-speaking countries, how's your Italian or your Greek? Because we can test you on it. Have you been
my
to
Greek
either
is not
Italy or
good. I
Greece?
love Giannis Antetokounmpo, basketball player from Greece. So I can say grazie, I can say domino baci in Italian. Oh man, Italian's not so good, but I would love to know. My Google Translate app on my phone I've pretty much responded to almost every message unless it was like vile or really mean. And I just go to Google Translate and hit up and, speak a little bit here and there.
I'm very happy with what you said. You could have said pizza or pasta and you didn't. So I'm very, very happy with what you said. That is awesome. What's been the most positive personal insight that's come out for you through making the film, but also in these last 3 months where you've really been able to share it with the globe?
I think the best comment I got that was really kind of poignant, because I'm a person that doesn't get too high or too low. So whether it's an amazing comment or some celebrity who has seen it, I don't get too high. And if it's someone being really mean and saying you're the worst person ever, your documentary sucks, I don't get very low. It's either way, I kind of screenshot and laugh. But there was a comment from someone I don't know, and they said, if aliens were to come to Earth and asked, what is love, I would show them this documentary. And I just thought that was really beautiful. So that was really encouraging for me. And I know a lot of filmmakers, I've been making stuff and putting it online for many years. And I think a lot of younger filmmakers dream to be in the 5% of what Hollywood is. So they dream to be Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan, but they forget that there's a 95% of directors, writers, actors that aren't the big A-list. And so I've never wanted to be in that 5%. I have nothing against it, but I think the 95% are working just as hard or harder in some ways. So I think people have this view of success, or that 5% celebrity with filmmaking, or this celebrity with having written a script. We romanticize things, and the same thing with making something that gets millions of views and making something that goes viral. And I think it's encouraging because of all the things for me to make to get this many views. Of course, I would want it to be this one because I want people to know who Jordan was. So that's been encouraging. And I think of all the ones, this is absolutely the right one to do that. And I think the timing was weirdly right with everyone being at home with COVID going on. And I think also the world just needed a cry. And I think this one kind of like broke the dam in some ways of realizing that, you know, the way that they might be currently living probably should be a little bit better or a little bit more loving to their siblings or to the world or to the strangers. So I've been encouraged by the empathy people have showed and the encouragement of just enjoying something that's good. And it doesn't matter if the character is likable. It's just they know when they see it. That's someone who you could leave your debit card with. You could date your daughter. You could have babysit your dog. Jordan just was that person that everyone would trust. A criminal would have trusted him. You know, a criminal would have confessed to him, hey, I did some things I shouldn't. He was just that type of person. So I think just people being able to identify that together universally has been really beautiful.
There's a few things I know in life, and there's a few things I don't understand. And what I don't understand is there's roughly 3,500 dislikes on YouTube with the documentary. You mentioned some of the vile messages. I don't want to dwell on this, but I don't understand. Can you help me just try and piece that part together in terms of the dislikes? Maybe you're seeing something I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, it's YouTube is a free country. That's not a political statement. So people are allowed to make an account and say this sucks or this is the best thing I've ever seen. And from making stuff for many years and putting it on the internet, you're exposed to this. And I think a lot of people were very surprised to see a comment. Like one of the first ones was like, you're an opportunistic brother making money off your brother's death. And I'm like, I made kind of a funny video in response on social media because I made this film with my own money. I put it on an ad-free, unmonetized YouTube channel for free, meaning I'm not making a dime. It's not anywhere. I'm not selling it. You can click play and there's no ads. So when you click play to when the credits roll, nothing should pause you because it's free. So that's people's perspective and they're obviously free to think that. But if they dig deeper, obviously they would find the truth. But I think that's just the way that people are. I mean, most of those people are the cliche like bullies who have internal mental problems of insecurity and fear and anger. Or people just have a weird perspective thinking, you're not the only person who's experienced grief. I experienced grief. And I'm not saying I'm the only person that has experienced grief. I just happen to be a filmmaker and I made a film about it. So 3.4 thousand dislikes, I guess, in comparison to what the likes are. I don't know off the top of my head. Doesn't compare, but I mean, that's kind of the world. I've been fairly surprised that there's not more hate, but I think a lot of that contributes to the fact that most of the demographic of who has watched it is female, at least what YouTube says. So I think the lady's a little bit more empathetic and slower to say, hey, you suck at life. I hate you. You shouldn't have made this, you know, but there's been a fair amount of comments I've had to delete for sure.
And the strong theme of humanity through your storytelling, how has this experience matured your own storytelling muscle and impacted you the way that you make your short films?
I hope to be more, you know, understanding of people to listen. You know, everybody has a story, whether it's includes death or includes a bad day at work. So I think being slow to listen, I think trying to be a writer that listens well as trying to be a human that listens as well, because most people, we listen to respond and we listen, but we're thinking of 10 other things. And I think I've tried to train my mind as a filmmaker and as a person to relinquish that and to listen to understand. so that then I can respond with something that contributes to the question or the thing at hand. And so from a filmmaking perspective, I want to listen. So when I frame a scene, I want the camera to listen. I don't want it to talk. The camera's not going to interrupt the scene. And so I don't think we as people should interrupt what we should listen to. So if that makes any sense, I think just encouraging, like, the aspect of who Jordan was is he didn't talk a lot when he was in a room. He didn't talk a lot when he was in a locker room. And when he did, everybody listened. As cliche as that sounds, that was the reality of who Jordan was. And when he laughed, you heard it probably more than anyone else's laugh. But I think he just listened well. He just didn't have anything to say, so he didn't say anything. And I think as a filmmaker, I want to be a good listener so that I can, when I do have something to say, it makes sense.
Just trying to piece together the timeline from when you started making the documentary. Was there a particular time or event where you realised that filmmaking was not just a hobby, but something that you wanted to pursue as a job?
I'm still trying to figure out how to make it a job. Yeah, there was a moment in high school where we had made this film in 2006. Jordan was a senior, I was a freshman, and we made this little wannabe high school Rambo film. And at that time, YouTube was not out, to my knowledge. And so if you wanted to see a film of mine, I had to burn it on DVD and bring it to your house, and you had to have a DVD player. And so a lot of our friends in Florida at the time would ask us to bring our DVDs for graduation parties, birthdays, and we were at someone's house at this event, and we showed our little 15-minute film. And, we're 15-year-old CIA agents, so it's a very laughable thing. But people were laughing and people were cheering, and it was kind of a moment of, I think this, I understand this. And so, but as far as a job, it is my job, but it's definitely something I live month to month as far as work goes. But yeah, I think it's taken me a long time, because growing up, I hated reading and I hated writing. I hated learning stuff I didn't want to learn. And so now, as a filmmaker, you're learning all the time, and I want to be a writer. So it's very funny if you look at my character arc from a child of not being able to comprehend what I'm reading, because it's like this dyslexic, I can't sit still. And now I want to write screenplays and books and the like, and I can sit here and write thousands and thousands of words without saying a word. So I'm still figuring that out, but it was that was probably a turning point, was in that high school moment of watching that film.
And have you found that how's your childhood impacted your filmmaking style, the way you share your stories? Obviously, you mentioned in terms of being involved with the church, with the family. Is there something that you're reflecting on when in your childhood that you think, that's really coming through in the way that I share my stories today?
That's a good question. Yes. So as a kid and up to now, I'm a pretty spongy person. I will soak in a room. I will go to someone's house, and if their walls on their house are yellow, I try to figure out why they painted it yellow. Why is it light? Why is it not dark? And to a Sherlock Holmes degree, that's probably not mentally healthy, but all that to say, I just soak up. If someone said something, I just kind of understand and feel and sense that person just lied. I don't know why I know that, but I just know that. So as a kid, 5 or 6 years old, you're guessing and estimating what's the truth and what's not, and why is that person being fake, and why does that feel off, and why does this thing. So all that to say, yes, it's a huge part of my life. I think I'll be squeezing out the sponge of my childhood for the rest of my life cinematically. Just growing up in a very Southern, religious culture, there's a lot of cinematic things that aren't filmed because it's not very romantic to look at. But I'm fascinated by small stories. I'm fascinated by small towns, and pretty much everything I've ever experienced goes into a script in some form. So it's a very impactful childhood, for better or for worse. The good, the bad, and the ugly definitely informs what I write and what I want to tell.
And whilst looking in the rearview mirror might influence the stories that you share moving forward, what are your life and filmmaking goals moving forward?
Well, to write and direct feature films, narrative films. Again, I'm not against documentaries, but I don't have dreams of that necessarily. So I had planned to shoot a short film this year, and then COVID hit, so that changed things. I'm trying to write this book about my brother that could be a kind of companion piece to the documentary. But also, again, the same way I made the documentary, I'm writing this for me. And if it becomes something the world can enjoy and read and get to know Jordan better, by all means. But for now, it's for me. So just being a writer that writes for me, and that I direct the stuff I write, but also I write stuff for other people to direct is the goal. So.
One of our followers Jack has asked, are there any plans to visit Australia post-COVID?
Not to my knowledge, but I have never been. I would love to go. I have not been to Australia, but that would be pretty amazing.
That was the unofficial official invitation.
Yeah.
You are invited.
Yeah, I would love to.
Any plans for a book, Justin? That's come through actually from a couple of people on the live stream. Any plans for a book?
Yeah, the My Brother Jordan book is the goal. I've dabbled in some other books, but they're more memoir based as well. So I'm kind of still living out that memoir. So at a time, I'm kind of caught up to date in a way of my current life in book form. But yeah, I'm trying to write the one about Jordan, and I'm hoping maybe by August of next year we'll see how life goes. But I'm not a experienced writer in that regard, so it's kind of new territory and new waters, a new medium. But I think it would be really impactful to tell Jordan's story through there. And there's probably more comedic stories than serious stories of our childhood, especially. So that's the immediate plans.
Fantastic. And have you thought about entering the documentary into any festivals or competitions?
I did, but at this point, most of the big top tier festivals, you're not allowed to have it online or for it to have premiered online. And with COVID, a lot of the festivals became virtual like this. And a film festival is all kind of priceless with the face-to-face interaction you might have with a fellow director that just enjoyed your film, or a producer that wants to make your next film. So I have no festival ambitions right now. I think it just being free for the world to see is what I'm most interested in. And I don't know where that journey is going to go, but I'm okay with where it's at right now.
And for that, Justin, we're very grateful, because it's because of that generosity that we've all been able to experience the story, and certainly the rest of the world too. And for that, we're very thankful. Now, as has become customary, we finish all of our interviews, if you like, with two questions. The first one is, if you were on a video call with your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give?
I'd probably ask my 18-year-old self to give me advice. What do you want to do when you're my age? I don't know. Someone asked me this on a podcast the other day, and I think being able to encourage my 18-year-old self that you know what to do, go do it. I was a very confident kid. I'm a confident person, and I think combining confidence with empathy is a really impactful superpower that can be used for good things. And so that's kind of what I'm shooting for. So I would probably tell him to keep being confident, but learn more about empathy and maybe slow down I come to a conclusion very quick, whether it's the truth or not. And I think the world is not ready for the truth so quick. So I need to be a little slower. I need to slow down the movie to let people catch up in a way. And that's not a diss to anybody. It's just the way that my mind works. So I feel very decisive about things, and I know what's right, and I'll say what's right, but that's often negative for the world. So I think telling myself to be confident and you know what to do, go do it, would probably be a start.
So we have another one that's snuck in, and I will ask you this one before we move to word association, but this one's come from Justin in Denver. And he says, the close relationship with your brother, how much of that was influenced by the close family environment? I have a brother, I love him dearly. And I think part of that is we're a close-knit family. How much of that did you experience? Or was it, maybe it was an and rather than an or, that he was just an awesome guy that you would have liked anyway?
Well, since we were homeschooled, and it wasn't like, he would have been in different classes if we were in public school or a Christian school or something. So I think just the fact that we spent so much time together, it's probably proximity more than anything. And he was kind of the gel for me to our whole family. He kind of kept everyone on their best behavior. He kind of was the gel for everybody, especially me. He was kind of the precursor that I probably needed. He was probably the elbow in the chest to go ease up before you go in. So I think all those things combined, that it was just, again, this perfect experiment that worked for me, because otherwise would have been a lot worse for my family or for Jordan.
Wonderful. Okay, time for word association. We probably need a little jingle music before we do word association, but off we go. So the way that this works, Justin, is I'm going to say a word, and you're going to just send one right back to us that depending on what pops into your mind first. You ready to play?
Okay.
Okay. Family.
Jordan.
Inspiration.
Motivation.
Filmmaking.
Life.
Jordan's legacy.
I don't know. You said it. That's it. I don't need to associate anything with that.
It's beautiful. Love.
Everything.
And finally, the future.
Unknown. Looking forward to it, though.
Likewise. Justin, thank you so much for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. We know it's late. Thank you for staying up with us and being part of Impactology Live. We're very grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thanks to your daughter for showing you the film, but I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. We're back at 1 p.m. with Mark LeBusque, who's going to be joining us from 1 p.m. We have an afternoon ready of interview, so jump on to the schedule on impactology.com.au. Check out the interviews that you might like to see today, tomorrow or Saturday. We'll see you back at 1 p.m.